At least 12 Chinese vessels were seen roaming around Sabina Shoal in the West Philippine Sea last November 23. The Armed Forces says similar ships were spotted in the same area earlier this month.
Nababahala ang Department of Foreign Affairs sa napaulat na reclamation activities ng China sa Spratly Islands.
The Chinese embassy in Manila has denied the alleged reclamation activities, dismissing the reports as fake news.
I think China wants to also express its displeasure. Hindi sila natutuwa dito sa direction ng Marcos administration foreign policy, and they feel that this new administration is far friendlier to U.S. than they perhaps anticipated.
Bloomberg says there have been ramped-up Chinese construction over portions of the Spratly Islands. Beijing was quick to call the report fake news. But the Philippines Foreign Affairs Department is taking serious note. It says such activities violate the 2016 arbitral ruling in favor of Manila. If true, will the Marcos administration do more than file a note of protest against China, which at last count this year is at 193? We discuss in this episode of The Chiefs. Welcome to The Chiefs. Ako po si Robbie Alampay. Kasama ko ngayon dito sa studio, Ed Lingao of One News. Ed, good evening. Mukhang tayong dalawa lang muna.
Naisa na naman tayo.
Pero ano bang, in the meantime, ano bang binabantayan natin?
Well, big story in the West Philippine Sea. At least 4 structures. What do you call them? Are these structures or?
Hindi ko alam. Yan yung pinagtatalunan ngayon. Whether or not this is potentially expanding on existing structures or the suggestion.
I'm sorry, features pala. Features.
Diba?
That's what they call them, features sa West Philippine Sea. Whether they're islands or rocks or sandbars, they're called features. 4 features in the West Philippine Sea, allegedly with Chinese activity. And one of them, Sandy Cay, appears to be very, very near dun sa Philippine-held Pag-asa Island.
Because I think in the Bloomberg story, when they refer to attempts or potential attempts to change the status quo. I think, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it basically suggests that these are new things separate from what people have effectively accepted as mukhang yan na yung baseline.
Yeah, in 2002, China and the Southeast Asian nations, they signed an unfortunately non-binding agreement. I don't know what may agreement pala non-binding, where all the parties were supposed to refrain from occupying unoccupied features in the West Philippine Sea. And that's where we are right now.
Kumbaga tigil muna. Kung nasan mo, kung ano yung inabutan natin, sige, diyan na muna tayo. Let's proceed from there.
Pero wala nang panibagong lamangan. Because in the 1970s, kanya-kanyang kuha yan eh.
So in other words, baka may lamangan na naman. But China may be pushing the boundaries again.
Yeah. And what's interesting with Sandy Cay, which is quite near Pag-asa Island, is if China does take control of that, and turns it into a high tide feature, meaning it's above the water even during high tide. That gives it a 12 nautical mile territorial sea, which encroaches into Pag-asa Islands territorial sea.
In the meantime, whether or not people are familiar with all of these islands and these different positions, what I think is going to be clear for people is parang linggo-linggo na lang natin pinag-uusapan ng China at saka South China Sea.
Well, diba? That's true. But in the past kasi kadalasan harassment lang of whether it's a supply ship or fishermen. In this particular case, you may, but again, that needs to be verified, you may be seeing a new construction in new features, which we haven't seen since 2013.
And then these mini episodes within all of these reports and speculations. Because on the one hand, di ba parang the other week we were talking about this floating material na may tug of war pinag-agawan. Just the other day, we were talking about ayungin Chinese vessels stopping our vessels from replenishing and delivering supplies to the BRP Sierra Madre.
Kasi naman, resupply ship natin, di mukhang Navy ship.
Pero may istorya doon. May istorya doon si Manny Magato. Anyway, these are the things we'll be talking about. We'll be bringing in our first guest after a quick break. Stay with us. The Chiefs will be right back. Hindi, si Lea.
Ka namin ngayon.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Okay na po. Sige,
Ah.
sir. 45 seconds.
There seems to be no stopping China from building more structures in the West Philippine Sea. That at least is according to a new report. Is there a new way of dealing with Beijing? Let's hear the point of view of defense expert De La Salle University's Professor Renato De Castro. Welcome back, the Chief, sir.
Welcome back. Hello. Thank you very much for bringing me back. And it's a pleasure and honor on my part to, again, express my view regarding this very important and pressing issue.
And we see you're in the South China Sea again.
Oh, yeah, showing, pressing upon our people that it's worth defending.
Hindi, but let's go straight to first itong Bloomberg report. And it is a report, it's a report that China is denying. But basically, I think the point of contention is whether or not China is, to quote the story, that trying to change the status quo in the South China Sea.
Yes.
What does that suggest and what does that mean, the status quo?
Well, let's go back to the 1990s, a term developed by a British analyst, Ian Story, when the first time we saw Chinese structures on Mischief Reef. He uses the term creeping occupation. And let's revive this term again. What we're seeing is not new, it is a continuation of China's creeping occupation. It's part of its long march to eventual maritime expansion into the South China Sea. That's what we're witnessing. Now, there's no change. It's just a continuation of Chinese policy that began when, of course, Chinese drove Vietnamese forces in one of the land features in the South China Sea in 1998.
Okay, but just to be clear, when we say that they are when we say that they're ramping up activities, when we say that they're expanding activities, are they improving on existing structures in features that we already know, or are they in fact building new structures in new features?
Well, based on the Bloomberg report, they're building new structures. Especially on two land feature, Winson Shoal. Remember, in March 2021, we had a standoff. This was the time that Secretary Lorenzana accused the Chinese of deploying the maritime militia. And of course, there was a standoff that lasted for a couple of weeks. The United States even deployed a carrier battle group, the Theodore Roosevelt, and a previous assault vessel. Basically to show that the United States would honor its treaty commitment to the Philippines. So that was, of course, one episode. It ended. But now we are seeing, again, Chinese determination and persistence to effect their creeping occupation of the South China Sea, which, of course, would eventually lead China to control the waters within what it calls its 9-dash line.
Yes, sir. Well, sir, I suppose just to put some history into the context, there was a time when everybody in the region was doing that, yung creeping occupation. But I suppose only until a certain point. Only until a certain point, after which parang, wala mo nang kikilos, wala mo nang gagalaw. When was that?
Oh, yes.
When was that? Kumbaga, kailan yung cut-off?
Actually, we were the one who started it, the 1960s. 70s. When the President Marcos ordered the occupation of Pag-asa, the Marines. 1973. Then you had the clash between China and South Vietnam. Then, of course, Vietnam took over. But those are just land features. But China is claiming almost 85% of the South China Sea, all waters. Not only those land features, but waters within the exclusive, within what it calls the 9-dash line. So we cannot compare what Vietnam, Malaysia, the Philippines have been doing with China is now trying to accomplish.
Yes, sir.
Effective control of 85% of the South China Sea, or the portion of our West Philippine Sea.
Yes, sir. What I'm trying...
Nothing beats China.
Yes, sir. I understand, sir. But what I'm trying to establish is, kailan bali nagkaroon ng cut-off kung saan wala ng galawan? I understand there was a point where there was an agreement na you have what you have and that's it. And no more occupation.
There's never been no agreement. There's never been no agreement. We have, of course, the non-binding, which you mentioned earlier.
In 2002.
It's a declaration. Of course, it's not binding because the declaration on the conduct of the parties of the South China Sea. It's a non-binding declaration. So the assumption here is at least there'll be a slowdown. But of course, China did not respect this. Especially, of course, after we filed the case against China in 2013. That's when China ramped up the reclamation and, of course, construction and, of course, militarization of those land features.
Okay. Prof, tarangin ko lang, as we said, we're looking back, di ba? Not just over the past weeks, not even over the past months, even over the past years. But let's look forward. Early next year, President Marcos is going to be visiting Beijing. He will have a face-to-face with Xi Jinping. Are all of these somehow related to that and setting the table for his visit to China?
No, I don't think so. It's really part of China's game plan to control whether you have President Marcos there or another. It's incidental from China. China is looking at it from the perspective of a great power.
Okay.
For us, the Philippines is just, you happen to be located there.
Okay.
The key issue here, of course, is China's maritime expansion primarily aimed to deprive the Seventh Fleet of its ability to operate in what China calls its first island chain.
Okay, so we see the perspective.
So sa China, link na yung South China Sea with East China Sea. They constitute what is called the first waters of within the first island chain. Ayun yung Japan, Taiwan, Philippines. China wants to control not only the South China Sea, but the whole of the waters of the first island chain. Kaya meron din silang dispute with, of course, Japan over the East China Sea. Then, of course, the Southeast Asian states in the South China Sea. That is China's goal. Maritime expansion, control of the waters of the first island chain, aim, of course, to push the Seventh Fleet out of the first waters of the first island chain. That's how they look at it. We're looking at it in terms of
but we see the perspective of Beijing, and to your point, it is a much bigger, much larger ambition, much larger, even self-perception, diba? Looking at it as you said, as they do on a global level. And nagkataon lang that the Philippines is, one small aspect to that in their view.
We happen to be on the way.
Nonetheless, let's look at it from the perspective of the Philippines, in particular of Malacanang, in particular of President Marcos. From his standpoint now, as he goes to Beijing next year, what will be his footing? And what is the message and what is the most that he can hope to achieve on this front?
Well, he will raise that issue. China would say, let's resolve it through friendly bilateral consultation. What does China mean by friendly bilateral consultation? It means that we simply have to accept the fait accompli. Now, this was captured by the Chinese Foreign Policy Counselor, in July 2010. during the ASEAN summit, no, when, I don't know if you remember, when then Secretary Hillary Clinton raised the point that, the United States has interest in the South China Sea. The Chinese, Yang Jiechi, look at the Singaporean foreign minister and told ASEAN, China is big, some states are small, and this is a reality that you would have to accept.
Okay, that's
So that's how China plays the game.
that's pretty
how China,
straightforward.
it's a big power.
And
We're going back again, July 2010. And again, President Duterte had raised this. President Marcos would raise this probably. But again, China said, let's engage in a bilateral consultation. Friendly. They even include the term friendly. Friendly means we have to accept the fait accompli. The strong will do what they have to do. The weak would simply have to accept the fate.
Sir,
That's the case
that was also the phrase they used to describe how they were able to retrieve that rocket debris from our forces.
Friendly consultation.
Friendly consultation.
That's what they mean. Yeah, friendly consultation, which is tantamount to coercion.
Okay. So, balikan ko lang yung sinabi nyo. Sa totoo lang, maliit lang tayo dito, given the worldview that they have. I don't think anybody will dispute that. But let's bring in the United States. Let's bring in the Western allies. Does that give us a stronger hand at the very least? Kahit
Let's
maliit pa rin.
move first the external factor. The most important is us, the Philippines. We should have a common consensus on what China represents. China is a clear and present danger to our national security since, of course, its maritime expansion. We should have a national consensus. Talk with the Vietnamese. Given their history, the Vietnamese are very much aware of the fact that historically, China has represented, of course, the greatest threat to their independence. Although the Vietnamese had no choice. They have to deal with the Chinese on the basis of geography, the basis of history. We have a choice. We are an archipelagic country. But the main problem is, of course, the national consensus is not there. We have not built up our armed forces of the Philippines. We have a national security advisor who thinks that, the most important thing is human security, rather than, of course, facing the clear and present danger in our maritime horizon. And that is, of course, China's maritime expansion. Don't get me wrong. I have a high regards for China, its history, and, of course, its civilization. But at this point in time, we're facing a powerful, assertive China that is bent on maritime expansion. And this is something that we would have to discuss.
Is the consensus that we're missing on the very question of whether or not China is a national security threat? I think there is consensus there. Parang ang walang consensus is, okay, what are you going to do about it?
No, we don't have a consensus. We have, just look at the policy of the previous administration, the Duterte administration. It was basically bent on appeasing China. So it was only on the latter part of the Duterte administration that he realized that appeasing China would lead it to nowhere. The consensus would have to, of course, be articulated in a national security strategy. And that is the task of the National Security Council. It's basically a reflection on how we view the world and what actions we have to take in the face of our perception of what is happening out there. So that's the first thing we have to do. The first homework starts inside our country. Start with our nation. Start in convincing, unifying our nation that we face a clear and present danger out there in our maritime horizon, and we have to do something about it. The first thing we have to do, of course, is to build up our own military capability, no matter, at least a credible military capability.
Well, sir, with what you just said, how do you view the president, the current president, and his view of China? I think, for example, within the military establishment, it's pretty clear what they think of China. The legislature, I'm not so sure. But what about the executive? When the president goes to Beijing, for example, how should he frame this relationship?
I would credit him for at least, even before he became president, he acknowledged the July 12, 2016 ruling. which of course declared that China's 9-line claim has simply had no legal basis. Unlike, of course, the previous administration, which only acknowledged the ruling in July 12, 2020. But even before he became president, he already acknowledged the ruling. And of course, in his recent talk in the exchange of the commander of the Philippine Air Force, he said, I am committed not only to the modernization of the Air Force, but the modernization of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. So I think this is the first step, is to develop a national outlook articulated in a national security strategy, and of course a national security strategy that would basically tell our people what are, of course, the dangers we face and why we have to address it as a nation.
Yeah, but Professor, one last question. If we were to express that strategy, do we know how China will react?
Well, we doesn't care. Why should we care about China's reacting? China is expanding to our maritime backyard. Does China care about what we feel? Come on. Why should we care about their feelings? They're intruding into our maritime domain. Goodness, why should we develop empathy to a power that's been and expanding into our maritime backyard?
Yes, sir. Pero sir, baka it's not empathy. Baka it's just realizing the fact that China has a big stick and all never hurts.
Do they care about depriving our fisher folks? They're driving away our fishermen. Do they care about the fact that we could not even conduct a survey inside the reed bank?
But Professor, let me just
international politics.
Yeah, but Professor, again, I have to preface na mabilis lang kasi we're actually out of time for this segment. But we don't ask in terms of empathy. I'm asking in terms of strategy and strategic considerations and strategic positioning. One of the big debates, of course, President Duterte was always very explicit about his fear na, if we go to war, if China wages war, kaya ba natin? And then at the same time, analysts also saying China will not go to war. China will not cross that line.
I agree.
So I guess that's my point. What are the scenarios that you're anticipating?
Okay, I'll say this. China's goal is not really to trigger war. China is playing it according to a Chinese stratagem. Art of war. To win without actually fighting. To intimidate the other side. To cause disarray in the other side's alliance. And in this game, China doesn't care how the Philippine or Filipino nation feel. So the first thing we have to do is deprive China that goal of winning without actually fighting.
Okay.
China learned learned it from the Vietnamese. The Vietnamese basically showed to the Chinese, no, you cannot push us around.
Okay.
In the case of the Philippines, my goodness, we're giving the Chinese a veto power over our own policy.
Well, okay. Professor Renato De Castro, sir, maraming salamat po.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much again for the honor of giving me a chance to express my view regarding. Merry Christmas.
Maligayang Pasko po. Professor
Christmas,
De Castro of De La Salle University. We're starting up another conversation after this break. Keep it here on One News.
YouTube ang music video ng Pentatonix featuring Tony Award winner na si Lea Salonga para sa cover nila ng Pinoy Holiday Classic na Christmas in Our Hearts.
We trumpet about Filipino artists being excellent and Filipino artists this, Filipino artists that, and we're so proud and yada, yada, yada. So we, and given that, it only makes sense that given that our artists are such an export, go anywhere in the world, you will find Filipino artists doing their thing. We should have one. I mean, you've pointed it out. We should have a department. I mean, we've already been able to do, and thanks to so many folks, creative industries bill was just passed, which makes me ecstatic. But yeah, to take that further, there needs to be a department for, where people like me and the entire creative and artistic, industry can fall under, and where it needs to be given priority.
We're all getting a holiday treat tonight. It's our pleasure to welcome to the program Filipino Pride, multi-awarded and world-class singer and actress, Miss Lea Salonga. Hi, Miss Lea. Welcome to the Chiefs, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Magandang gabi.
Thank you for having me. Much appreciated. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Sayang wala si Lucci dito kasi kung nandito si Lucci, sigurado ako kakanta yun eh. So, pasensya na lang pag si Robbie biglang kumanta.
I will not.
Well, start off with this. Of course, your collaboration with Pentatonix is, I think, among the top 20 already on YouTube. Tell us how it came about and
it's amazing.
Yeah, and sana inagahan niyo ng mga September para kasabi ni Jose Marichan, di ba? Whenever the bear months come around.
Diba? So how did this come about? Well, actually, it was pretty simple. It was a case of Pentatonix contacting my manager in the U.S. and then getting a recording session scheduled. That's really that simple. But there is a backstory to my singing this particular Christmas song. Way back when the song was originally produced, I think it was maybe around 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Tito Jo Marichan asked me to originally sing it with him. But I think because of recording company conflicts at the time, I couldn't do it. So his daughter Lisa was the vocalist. He eventually enlisted to do the duet with him. 30 years goes by, and it's Tito Jo's version that is played here every Christmas season. Yun yung version na tinutugtog sa radyo, sa shopping mall, wherever. And then Pentatonix was putting together another holiday album, and the concept is this: let's go to let's check different countries and see what the #1 holiday song is in each of these countries. So when it came to the Philippines, the #1 song is Christmas in Our Hearts by Jose Marichan and Lisa Chan. And then so Pentatonix decides to do a cover. And with each cover that they do, I think they get someone from an artist from that country to sing with them. If it's the #1 song at Christmas time in Japan, they'll get Japanese artists to sing with them. If it's in India, they'll get somebody from India. So when it came to Christmas in Our Hearts, which is from the Philippines, they asked me, not knowing that I was supposed to be the original artist to sing this song. So when I was actually in the studio in LA last May to record this, one of the members actually came, a couple of the members actually came and visited to check out the session and see how everything was looking at and how everything was sounding. And I told them the story, and they couldn't believe it. So it just felt like serendipity to get to sing this particular song.
But Lea,
Tito Jo has been so supportive of it. Yeah, so it's quite the adventure this song has had.
But Lea, let me ask you, as you said, serendipitous, and you're also obviously part of the story of the song. Let me ask you, as an artist and as a Filipino, why is this song the number one Christmas song among Filipinos?
Versus something like "Oh Holy Night" or "Silent Night" or "All I Want is Christmas." All I want for Christmas is you. I think there's just something that the song captures that really reflects our culture. I mean, it reflects what we believe Christmas to be. That it isn't just about lanterns and the physical manifestations of the season. We really understand it to be that this is the season to celebrate the birth of Christ, and that there's so much more. What the parol signifies, and also feeling empathy for those who are less fortunate. So there is that. It's not just about the pomp and circumstance of the season, but also reflecting on the significance of it. So I think that's why, opinion ko lang ha. So I think that's why the song really touches the hearts of many Filipinos that have fallen in love with it. And now there's a brand new version that's out, and it's still a Filipino that gets to be a part of it. So we can't believe that it's getting the kind of attention that it's getting. It's been viewed over 1 million times on YouTube. And I think it's been trending. My mom is ecstatic. She's really, really excited about everything. And once the music video was released, she's been, I think, calling everyone on her contact list just to talk about it. So she's doing her own promotional effort on my behalf, for which I'm quite grateful.
Yeah. Speaking of the spirit of Christmas, and we mentioned this also by way of belatedly congratulating you, of course, on being named as one of Time Magazine's Impact Awardees. Time described you as a lifelong role model for kids of color. Obviously, there's something there with Pentatonix as well, reaching out to you. And for you, not just representing at this point Filipinos, I mean, Asians embrace you as their representative. And representation is such a big thing in these past 2 years. Talk to us about that, about this moment of Asian artists collaborating, but also more importantly, this moment of the importance of representation in entertainment globally, and how you found how you become an important voice and face in this movement.
Well, really, the idea, the concept of representation is just being able to see someone on television, on film, on stage that resembles you, that reflects what you look like. And for a very long time, Asian artists have not been able to see themselves in people that are on television. Or if they do, it is not always a positive representation. Like Asian women are, they are sometimes seen as, weak humans that have to be saved. Or Asian men are emasculated. So when we see positive representations of our people, whether it's from Southeast Asia or from East Asia, anywhere from the continent, it makes me as an Asian artist extremely excited, because it's like, oh, here's another opportunity for our people to be seen in the way that we deserve. And so I try to be as supportive as I can, whether it's a Broadway musical or a TV show. If I see one of my friends, John Briones, who was the engineer in Miss Saigon for its revival, he played Maurice in a recent televised airing of Beauty and the Beast, and so it's like, this is so exciting for us that we get to see him play a role that he otherwise would not be able to get. So it's fantastic, and I was so excited for him.
Well, Lea, you've been wildly successful, even in the international scene. But of course, we can imagine it wasn't that easy. I was just wondering, how hard is it for Filipinos or Asians or people of color to be recognized in the international scene?
It's hard. It's not always the easiest thing, and and I think our people got a pretty rude awakening on Broadway. There was a musical called K-pop, which opened and closed around from opening night to closing night. It was like 2 weeks and change, maybe. It was an incredibly short run.
Okay.
And it just, so it's quite difficult, and it broke my heart because it was a show where most of the actors, save for one, was Asian, and I thought the talent that was on stage performing was incredible. There were 2 Filipinos in the company. One of whom is somebody that I've known since she was 8 years old. So it's really, it's not the easiest thing. I mean, I was extremely fortunate to have the opportunities that I had, and I keep constantly hoping and praying, and that there will be more opportunities for another generation, to enjoy the kind of luck and opportunity that I've had. So, I'm not selfish with regards to this. So I'm always just constantly hoping. And I mean, things have been improving, and there have been things like Hamilton, which was monumentally successful. And there are more people of color that are being cast in shows and in all sorts of roles. And there's this movie that I just saw on the plane ride home, Everything Everywhere All at Once, starring Michelle Yeoh. And that movie was just so incredible, and I'm hoping that it wins all sorts of awards for everybody that was a part of it. It was just extraordinary, and I would recommend people to, watch this film multiple times. I think it takes at least 3 or 4 viewings to get all of it. But it made me feel extremely proud as an Asian artist to see that movie, and just my jaw falling to the ground. So there are efforts that are incredibly successful. There are efforts that are not quite as successful. But that's showbiz, and those are the breaks. But, I'm just hoping that creative forces are not discouraged and continue to write, continue to direct, continue to create. Because it gives the community at large a lot of hope.
And to that point, as you mentioned, hopefully more opportunities for the next generation. As you said, I do want to ask you later a bit about the creative industries law here in the Philippines. But before that, just one last quick question on representation. Because I saw your video, your music video that you produced with Asia Society Philippines on You've Got to Be Taught. This music video adapted from, I think, South Pacific, with a very, very, very important message. Came out particularly at that moment about Asian hate and so on. Apart from the equal access that we want and the exposure that we want, talk to us a bit as well about what the creative industry can do to also heal and to also bridge cultures and basically replace hate with love.
Most especially at the start of the pandemic, there was just so much hateful rhetoric that, placed the wrong kind of spotlight on Asian people. And there was, in New York City notably, but in other cities in the U.S., there were physical attacks And I don't think that, it's almost 3 years now since the start of the pandemic, and I think it's still happening. I mean, I live in New York City, and I haven't, taken a ride on the subway just because I don't want to be one of those unfortunate people that get slashed in the face or hit in the face or attacked just for existing, And there have been quite a few people that look like me that have gotten victimized, all because there are people that decide, let us scapegoat this massive group of people when, we didn't do anything. This virus wasn't our fault. This pandemic wasn't our fault. And, to place blame on us is just wrong. And that's going to be a tough one to overcome. As for what the creative industry can do, and it's going to be, I think, quite an uphill battle, but I think it's just to continue to represent our people and our art in positive ways. It's just going to take some time. And yeah, that's really it. Our creative forces are not going to stop creating. Fashion designers, furniture designers, playwrights, composers, arrangers, performers, all of us are going to continue to do what it is that we love to do and are really, really good at. And that's really all we can do as far as, showing our faces to the world. And I think it's also going to take, people of influence to say, this is wrong. And I think that there are people naman that are doing that. But it's so hard. And I don't have all the answers. I wish I was really, really smart and I would, to be able to figure out a solution to all of that. But, people calling this whole thing Kung Flu really, really harmed a lot of people that look like us. That was just so dumb.
Okay, Lea, let's talk about you naman. I suppose you're back in Manila or you're back in the Philippines. Kasi it's nighttime behind you. I suppose it's not the morning there. So you're back here.
It's really, really cold in New York. So I'm here not for very long. I'm here for the holidays, see my mom, see some friends, get some errands done, and then head back to New York. As my daughter has been going to school over there. So so it'll be back to winter in about a week and a half, I guess. So in the meantime, I'm going to enjoy this balmy weather that we're having. It is quite nice. I'm very happy about it.
Okay.
Like I said, I did want to ask you, we caught a bit of the clip of your conversation with Cito Beltran, talking a bit about the creative industries law. But talking about the creative industries here, what would you like to see? We have a law, but what does it mean for the country to have even a real grasp or understanding of what it means to look at the creatives as an industry, as something that can contribute not just to our culture, but even to our economy? I mean, what do we need to understand about the creative industry?
Okay, the actual best person to talk about this is Congressman Tof de Venecia. A lot of that bill, I think, was written by him, and this is one of those things he's been fighting for forever. Himself being a part of the creative industry. He's also he founded a theater company, and he just directed a successful run of a musical. He directed Carousel in a black box, and I think it was reconceptualized. It's unfortunate I wasn't able to see it. So he's the best person to talk to with regards to this bill. But as far as it becoming a more formalized industry, I think it was, this creative industry, I don't think it really was a formal thing. Medyo watak-watak. Everyone was kind of doing their own thing. And, as many of us were getting together to talk about this bill, there were so many things that I didn't know. so many things about even the music industry that I didn't realize or even was aware of, or how many industries actually comprise the creative industries. It's a lot. It includes, besides, visual arts, the performing arts, dance, there's fashion, furniture, culinary, interior design, I think even architecture, name it. If it's a creative effort, chances are, yes, literature, writing, music, definitely. And now that everything has kind of been pulled together, I think it's nice to be able to be recognized in that way. But yeah, I am not the academic, and I certainly don't have all the information in my head. So I'm going to refer you to the actual experts on this, people who actually were on the ground and worked so tirelessly to get it passed.
Okay. Well, I think you mentioned that you're planning to spend Christmas here. Well, of course, it's already this weekend.
And I'm already here. So.
Yeah, I know. So, but maybe you can tell us a bit of how different Christmas is here versus how different it is in New York. The way people spend Christmas, from what you've observed.
From what I've observed, I've lived in the U.S. for quite a few years. I love spending Christmas here. First of all, the weather is much kinder.
Well, yeah.
Especially that as I'm getting older. Yeah, the cold weather is not fun to deal with. But actually, the weather now in New York seems to be milder this holiday season. It's not particularly, it's not freezing cold, which is good. It tends to be a much more secular, secular thing.
Yeah.
Unless you are a person of faith, then you will definitely attend a Christmas service or a Christmas mass with your family. And then, of course, there's opening presents and getting together for a meal. Over here, it's, I just get together with my brother and his family, and of course my mom, who is very excited to have all of us home. So she's been preparing Noche Buena for a while. She orders her food, she starts cooking like the day before, I think, and then I get many, many phone calls asking what I want. If there's anything in particular that I want to eat when I get home, when I get to my mom's house, that kind of thing. And I want to be able to celebrate as many Christmases as I can with her. She's not, as young and as spry as she used to be. She's 85. Still tough and still very strong and still able to yell at people, for which I'm actually quite grateful. So while I still have her, I need to come home every year to spend the holidays with her.
Yeah, and we certainly wish you a Merry Christmas. As you said, you're only staying here very, very quickly before you fly off. But before we let you go, maybe tell us what are you excited for in 2023? And what can Filipinos be excited for about Lea Salonga in the next year?
Things that are starting to get scheduled. There are concerts, I think, on my calendar. LeaSalonga.com, there should already be some concerts that are listed. So just have to check that out. I know that I have some dates in California starting in the spring. And so that's what they can look forward to as far as I'm concerned. As for what I'm looking forward to for the following year, I don't know. The world is in such a weird place at the moment. Like, sometimes I turn on the TV and I check out the news or I look online and I'll be like, okay, what confusing thing is making the headlines this time? So I'm hoping for a much more peaceful year. I mean, we're all now living with COVID, and we're all figuring out how to coexist with this virus. And I think, as time goes on, we're figuring ourselves out. COVID, by the way, is not fun. I had it about a month and a half ago. Not fun. Avoid it as much as you can.
Yeah.
Even if you are healthy. It's a pain in the butt to experience. Would not recommend it, but we're learning how to live with it. And so it's something that we can already say, okay, that's just one of the things that we have to live with. Like, we have to live with the common cold and the flu. So there are other things that we have to try and figure out. Just the general confusion that's going on in the world, and ongoing wars and other conflicts that are still, that are causing so much pain. I would like to be able to look forward to not having that anymore, if that makes any sense.
It certainly makes sense to all of us.
But before we let her go, I hope you don't mind. We have 3 more days before Christmas Eve. I was wondering if you could sing a few stanzas for us of Christmas in Our Hearts, if you don't mind.
Oh, sure. Okay. Just to hopefully put us into the season. Okay. Let's sing Merry Christmas and a Happy Holiday. This season may we never forget the love we have for Jesus. Let him be the one to guide us as another new year starts. And may the spirit of Christmas be always in our hearts. Merry Christmas, you guys. Have a wonderful holiday.
Lea Salonga.
Thank you. We had to stop Robbie from singing.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we know it's only a few precious days, and all the more that we appreciate your sparing these few precious moments with us. Maraming salamat. We'll let you get back to your family.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks a lot, you guys.
Maligayang
Thank you. Have a good
Pasko.
night.
Lea Salonga po. And that is it for the Chiefs. We hope what was discussed will keep the conversation going. Ako po si Robbie Alampay.
I'm Ed Lingao. We are One News, all sides, all the time.